Last month, on Flight QF1127 from Sydney to Los Angeles, an arrogant businessman named Bradley Carter made a colossal mistake. He insulted the legendary Elon Musk, a man whose name echoes through history not just for his inventions, but for his unshakable character. What unfolded on that flight revealed a side of Elon few have witnessed, a blend of calm authority and unexpected wisdom. It all went down in December 2024 at Sydney International Airport, and trust me, it's a story worth hearing. Picture this. Elon Musk strode through the first-class cabin of the Los Angeles-bound plane, his presence commanding attention without even trying. He wore scuffed work boots, a weathered leather jacket, and his signature Tesla cap pulled low over his piercing eyes. The faint hum of jet engines buzzed outside as passengers stole curious glances at the famous face partially hidden beneath that cap. He settled quietly into seat 6A, his broad shoulders relaxed, his hands resting casually on his lap. Most people didn't recognize him at first. His unassuming style threw them off. But that peace didn't last long. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the cabin. "Hey, you! Yeah, you in the cheap boots. This is my seat. Get the hell out." Bradley Carter loomed in the aisle, his tailored charcoal suit pristine, a vein throbbing in his forehead. Fresh off a disastrous business meeting in Sydney that had cost him a $50 million deal, Bradley was a ticking time bomb. His slicked back hair and Rolex gleamed under the cabin lights, but his eyes were wild with frustration. He glared at Elon, not yet realizing who he was dealing with, and let his anger pick its target. Elon looked up, his face breaking into that characteristic half-smile. Calm, unshaken, almost amused. "Afternoon, friend," he said, his Texas drawl smooth as ever. "Mind if we check those tickets?" His tone was polite, unruffled, like he was asking about the weather. Bradley's face turned crimson, his fists clenching at his sides. "Check the tickets? Look at you, those boots! That jacket! You clearly wandered in from economy. First class isn't for people like you." A few passengers shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension, but Elon didn't flinch. With a steady hand, Elon reached for Bradley's ticket, which the businessman slapped into his palm with a sneer. That small piece of paper was about to unravel more than just a seating mix-up. Elon turned it right side up, his movements deliberate, almost theatrical, and a ripple of stifled laughter spread through the cabin. Bradley's seat? Number 9A, not 6A. "I don't care what the damn ticket says," Bradley spat, his voice rising. "Someone like you can't afford first class." "What did you do, sell your beat-up pickup truck to buy that seat?" A flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah with a crisp uniform and a nervous smile, stepped forward. "Sir, your seat is—" Bradley cut her off, his ego in full swing. "Do you know who I am? I'm Bradley Carter, CEO of Carter Industries." His voice cracked slightly on the company name. That morning's financial news had been brutal. His big Sydney deal had imploded. His stock was tanking, and his pride was all he had left. Elon tilted his cap slightly, his eyes locking onto Bradley's. "Sometimes life has a funny way of teaching us humility, Mr. Carter," he said, his voice low but firm. Bradley barked a harsh laugh. "Humility? I built my empire from scratch. I don't need lectures on success from some wannabe cowboy who probably counts his money in nickels." Elon's gaze didn't waver. "You might want to count again, partner," he replied, a hint of mischief in his tone. Then, with a slow drawl that filled the cabin, he added, "Try thousands per rocket launch." The words hung in the air, a quiet bombshell that made Bradley's jaw tighten. Bradley's face twisted with rage. "Listen here, you worthless!" He stopped himself as a mother in row 8 covered her son's ears, shooting him a glare. "First class is for real successful people, not some guy who thinks dressing like a garage mechanic makes him hot stuff." Elon stood then, rising slowly from his seat. At 6'2", his presence filled the space, his movements carrying the quiet power of a man who'd faced down worse than an angry executive. Two flight attendants exchanged knowing looks. They'd seen that stance before, though Bradley was too furious to notice. Success isn't measured by the suit you wear, partner, Elon said, his voice steady as steel. Sometimes it's about how you treat others when you think no one's watching. Bradley's laugh echoed, sharp and bitter. Oh, spare me the cowboy wisdom. What would you know about success? Those boots probably cost less than my cufflinks. A kid nearby, a wide-eyed boy named Timmy, tugged his mom's sleeve. Mom, that's... She shushed him, pulling out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen as recognition dawned. Elon settled back into his seat, crossing one boot over his knee. You might want to check your social media, friend, he said casually. Seems today's business news about Carter Industries is stirring up quite a storm. Bradley's face went pale, his bravado faltering. The failed Sydney deal, how did this guy know? His company's stock was in free fall, his biggest client had bailed, and now this stranger was throwing it in his face. Who the hell are you? Bradley stammered, his voice cracking. Elon just smiled, that same knowing grin that had stared down skeptics and naysayers for decades. Just someone who learned real power isn't about putting others down, he said. Whispers started then, rippling through the cabin. A teenage girl in row 4 gasped, showing her phone to her parents. The wave of recognition spread like wildfire, and Bradley was about to discover exactly who he'd been berating. Security! Bradley shouted, desperate to regain control. Someone call security! This man refuses to move to his proper seat in economy. The head flight attendant, a seasoned woman named Linda, approached, barely hiding her amusement. Sir, I've checked the manifest. Mr. Musk is assigned to seat 6A, prime first class. Bradley's voice hitched. Mr. Musk? An older man across the aisle leaned forward, his silver hair catching the light. Son, you've been yelling at Elon Musk for the last 10 minutes. The color drained from Bradley's face as the pieces clicked into place. The boots, the confidence, the cryptic rocket comment, it all made sense now, and it was terrifying. That's impossible, he stuttered. Elon Musk wouldn't dress like what, partner? Elon's eyes twinkled. Like someone who values results over appearances? Like someone who doesn't need a 3-piece suit to know his worth? Passengers weren't even pretending to mind their own business now. Phones were out, recording Bradley's meltdown for posterity. Mr. Musk, I didn't... Bradley's designer tie suddenly felt like it was choking him. Seat 9A's right back there, Elon said, pointing with a nod. Unless you'd prefer economy. Laughter rippled through the cabin, but Elon wasn't finished. As Bradley turned to slink away, Elon's next words stopped him cold. You know the difference between strength and power, Mr. Carter? Bradley glanced back, shame and curiosity warring on his face. Elon Musk, the man who'd built empires and launched humanity toward the stars, was about to teach him something life-changing. Real strength, Elon continued, his voice carrying effortlessly through the now silent cabin, isn't about making others feel small. It's about lifting them up, even when they've tried to tear you down. Bradley stood frozen, his earlier arrogance crumbling. The man he'd mocked as poor, the man he'd judged by his boots, was a global icon whose wealth and influence dwarfed his own. And yet, instead of crushing him, Elon was offering wisdom. I've spent my life pushing boundaries, Elon said, standing again, his presence magnetic. But the toughest battles aren't fought with tech or money. They're fought inside, against our own pride and prejudice. Sarah, the flight attendant, approached with Bradley's carry-on. Sir, your seat's ready, she said, but Bradley didn't move. His mind raced, replaying every insult he'd hurled, every smug remark. I'm finished, he muttered, his voice hollow. First the deal, now this. Tomorrow everyone will know. No, Elon said gently. What they'll know is whether you had a bad day, made a mistake, or learned from it. Bradley looked up, startled by the lack of judgment in Elon's tone. The world's quick to judge, slow to forgive, Elon went on. But real redemption starts with owning your mistakes. An elderly woman in row 10 spoke up, her voice shaky but kind. I remember when you started Tesla, Mr. Musk. You were always grounded, even when the world doubted you. Elon nodded. Because every day, someone reminded me where I came from. I never wanted to forget. Bradley's knees wobbled. The man he'd sneered at had more wealth, material and moral, than he could fathom. And instead of humiliating him, Elon Musk was offering him a lifeline. "Take a seat, partner," Elon said, gesturing to the empty spot beside him. "Let me tell you about my first big pitch." Bradley hesitated, then sat, the cabin watching in stunned silence as the legend began to share. "Showed up in boots just like these," Elon said, tapping his foot with a grin. "The investor took one look and said I belonged in a factory, not a boardroom." "Know what I did?" Bradley shook his head, still reeling. "Thanked him, went home, worked harder, and came back the next month, still in these boots." Timmy, the kid from row 8, was filming now, but Bradley didn't care. His own words haunted him. "First class isn't for people like you." "Did you get the deal?" Bradley asked quietly. "Eventually," Elon said, "but that's not the point. That investor taught me something, just like you're learning today." The cabin was hushed, hanging on every word. "Money can buy a first-class ticket," Elon said, "but it can't buy class itself. That comes from how you treat others, especially when you think no one's watching." Bradley stared at his polished loafers. "I lost a $50 million deal today," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "Everything I built, it's slipping away." "Sometimes we need to fall," Elon replied, "to learn how to stand right." And the plane's engines hummed as the crew began pre-flight checks, but all eyes stayed on the unlikely pair in row 6, the humble visionary and the humbled tycoon. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as flight QF1127 taxied toward the runway, but the glow of phone screens kept the first-class section alive with quiet chatter. Bradley Carter sat beside Elon Musk, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, still processing the whirlwind of the last 20 minutes. The man he'd dismissed as a nobody was now sharing a story that felt oddly personal, like a lifeline tossed to a drowning man. Elon leaned back in his seat, his voice steady and warm, picking up where he'd left off. "See, that investor wasn't wrong to doubt me," Elon said, a faint chuckle in his throat. "I was green, barely knew how to pitch a business, let alone run one, but I figured something out that day. Failure's just a detour, not a dead end." Bradley glanced at him, his polished exterior cracking under the weight of his own detour, a $50 million deal lost to a rival who'd outmaneuvered him in Sydney. "How do you come back from something like this?" he asked, his voice raw. "Everyone on this plane's seen me at my worst." Elon turned to him, his eyes sharp but kind. "That's exactly where redemption starts, partner. Rock bottom. It's where you find out what you're made of." He gestured subtly toward the other passengers, their faces a mix of curiosity and amusement. "These folks don't want to see you crash and burn. They want to see you climb back up. That's the American way. Second chances for those who earn them." Bradley swallowed hard, the sting of his earlier outburst still fresh. "I judged you without knowing a thing about you," he admitted, his voice trembling. "Called you poor? Mocked your boots? God, I was so wrong." Elon's smile widened, a glint of humor breaking through. "Now that's what I call a self-inflicted kick to the ego," he said, and the tension in the cabin finally broke. A wave of laughter rolled through the rows, soft at first, then louder, and for the first time Bradley managed a shaky smile. The plane lifted off, the Sydney skyline shrinking below as they climbed into the night sky. Elon reached into his leather jacket and pulled out a crumpled newspaper clipping, sliding it across the tray table. "Your failed deal made the morning news," he said. "But did you read the whole story?" Bradley shook his head, his stomach twisting as he took the paper. The headline screamed, "Carter Industries loses $50 million contract amid ethics concerns." He skimmed the article, his breath catching at the details he'd missed in his blind panic earlier that day. "The company you tried to buy," Elon explained. "It's run by a guy named Jack Reynolds. Started with nothing, literally, a toolbox and a dream. Built it up over 20 years, treated every employee like family. He didn't reject your offer because of money, Bradley. He rejected it because your reputation got there first." Bradley's hands trembled, the paper crinkling in his grip. "My reputation," he muttered, "for chasing profit over people. for judging books by their covers, just like I judged you. Elon nodded, tapping his scuffed boot against the floor. Exactly. Jack's company's small, but it's solid. He didn't want it gutted by someone who'd fire half his staff to boost the bottom line. Bradley stared at the clipping, the words blurring as shame washed over him. I thought I was winning, he said quietly. All those years, cutting corners, pushing people around. I thought that's what success looked like. Success isn't what you think it is, Elon replied, his tone shifting to something deeper, almost philosophical. It's not the size of your bank account or the title on your card. It's the lives you touch, the legacy you leave. He paused, letting the words sink in, then added, You know what's ironic? When I started out, I couldn't afford a bus ticket, let alone first class. But even then, I knew something a lot of rich folks never figure out. What's that? Bradley asked, hanging on every word. Elon leaned closer, his voice dropping. The size of your wallet matters less than the size of your heart. Across the aisle, a teenage girl named Mia wiped a tear from her cheek, her mom lowering her phone after recording the exchange. The cabin was silent now, the hum of the engines underscoring Elon's quiet intensity. Sarah, the flight attendant, approached hesitantly, clutching a torn scrap of paper. Mr. Musk, I hate to interrupt, but my nephew, he's fighting leukemia. Could you... Before she could finish, Elon took the paper, scribbling a quick note and signing it with a flourish. Tell him to keep fighting, he said, handing it back. I'll say a prayer for him tonight. Sarah's eyes welled up as she nodded, clutching the autograph like it was gold. Bradley watched, stunned. The same man he'd mocked for his cheap boots was treating a flight attendant with the respect he'd failed to show anyone all day. See that? Elon said, turning to him. That signature's worth more than these boots, but the hope I can give her nephew, that's priceless. He leaned back, crossing his arms. Your deal wasn't just about money, partner. It was about character, and today's your shot to show yours. The plane hit cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign flicking off, but no one moved. All eyes stayed on row 6, where Bradley sat grappling with a truth he'd dodged for years. How do I fix this? He asked, almost pleading. My company's a mess. My name's trash. Where do I even start? Elon's gaze softened. Start where you stand. You've got a long flight ahead. Use it to think about who you want to be when you land. Bradley nodded slowly, the weight of the day settling into something new, not defeat, but possibility. Mr. Musk, Elon, he corrected himself, I don't deserve this. You could have humiliated me, and instead you're helping you? Elon finished, raising an eyebrow. Life's too short for grudges, partner. Besides, I've been where you are, cocky, clueless, and one step from a fall. Someone gave me a hand up once. Now it's your turn. A young boy 2 rows back, Timmy, piped up, his voice cutting through the quiet. Mr. Musk, are you really the guy who built the rockets? Elon chuckled, turning to flash him a grin. Guilty as charged, kid. Want to see a picture of the next one? Timmy's eyes lit up as Elon pulled out his phone, showing off a sleek design that drew gasps from nearby passengers. For a moment, the tension dissolved, replaced by the easy wonder Elon always seemed to inspire. Bradley watched, a faint spark igniting in his chest. You're not just a businessman, he said, almost to himself. You're something else. Elon shrugged, pocketing his phone. Just a guy who likes solving problems, whether it's getting to Mars or getting through to a guy like you. The cabin erupted in soft laughter again, and this time Bradley joined in, the sound foreign but freeing. The hours stretched on as Flight QF1127 soared over the Pacific, the cabin settling into a hum of quiet conversations and the occasional clink of glassware. Bradley Carter sat beside Elon Musk, his earlier bravado replaced by a raw, unguarded curiosity. The newspaper clippings still lay crumpled on the tray table, a stark reminder of his unraveling empire. But Elon's words had planted a seed, something fragile but alive, and Bradley wasn't ready to let it die. So what happened after that pitch? Bradley asked, his voice quieter now, less defensive. Elon stretched his legs, the scuffed boots catching the dim overhead light. Well, he began. I didn't get the deal that day. Walked out with nothing but a bruised ego and a few bucks in my pocket. But I didn't quit. Went back to my garage. Yeah, a real garage, not some fancy office. Tinkered with my ideas and pitched again a month later. Same boots, same fire. That time they listened. Bradley nodded, picturing a younger Elon, scrappy and relentless, hammering away at dreams the world wasn't ready for. And that was Tesla? He ventured. Elon laughed, a deep, genuine sound that turned a few heads. Nah, that came later. This was Zip 2, my first real swing. Sold it for a decent chunk eventually, but the money wasn't the win. The win was proving I could build something from nothing, even when everyone said I couldn't. Bradley glanced down at his own hands, soft, manicured, unscarred by the kind of grit Elon described. I've never built anything like that, he admitted. I inherited my dad's company, turned it into a machine. All I've done is buy, sell, and squeeze, never created a damn thing. His voice cracked, the confession spilling out like a dam breaking. Today's not just a bad day, it's proof I've been coasting on fumes. Elon tilted his head, studying him. You're not wrong to see it, he said. But you're wrong to think it's too late to change the game. You've got resources, smarts. Use them to build something real, not just pad your portfolio. Bradley frowned, skepticism creeping in. After today, my board's probably drafting my resignation. The internet's already got me trending as first-class jerk. How do I come back from that? Elon leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his intensity palpable. You don't come back by hiding, partner. You do it by owning the mess, every ugly bit of it. That video of you yelling at me, it's gold if you play it right. Bradley blinked, confused. Gold? It's a PR nightmare. Only if you let it be, Elon countered. Turn it into a story, your wake-up call. Show the world you're not the guy in that clip anymore. People love a redemption arc more than a scandal. Across the aisle, Mia, the teenager who'd been filming earlier, perked up, her earbuds dangling as she caught snippets of the conversation. Her mom, Lisa, leaned over with a shy smile. He's right, you know, she said to Bradley. My husband tanked his career 5 years ago. Big mistake, public fallout. He owned it, started over, and now he's doing better than ever. People forgive when they see heart. Bradley looked at her, surprised by the kindness in her voice after he'd made such a fool of himself. Elon nodded at Lisa. See? She gets it. You've got a whole plane full of witnesses here. Use 'em. Let 'em see you rise. Bradley rubbed his temples, the gears in his mind turning. You really think I can flip this? He asked. I know you can, Elon said, his confidence unshakable. But it starts with you deciding who you want to be right here, right now. The cabin grew quiet again as Bradley wrestled with the idea. Sarah, the flight attendant, passed by with a tray of drinks, pausing to offer them each a glass of water. You're a good one, Mr. Musk, she said softly. My nephew's gonna flip when he hears you're praying for him. Elon took the glass with a nod. Tell him I said to keep kicking butt. Cancer's no match for a fighter. She beamed, then glanced at Bradley. And you, don't give up either, okay? Bradley managed a weak smile, the first genuine one all day. As Sarah moved on, Elon sipped his water and continued. You asked how I made it. Truth is, I failed more times than I can count. SpaceX nearly went bust. Tesla hit walls I thought we'd never climb. But every flop taught me something. Your deal falling apart, it's not the end. It's your lesson. Bradley stared at his glass, the ice clinking faintly. What's the lesson? He asked. That chasing money without purpose leaves you empty, Elon said. Find a why bigger than your wallet, and the how figures itself out. Bradley sat back, letting the words settle. Outside, the sky was a deep indigo, stars piercing the darkness like pinpricks of hope. I wanted that deal to prove I was the best, he said finally. But I didn't care who I stepped on to get it. Elon set his glass down. And now? Bradley hesitated, then met his gaze. Now I think I want to prove I can be better, not just richer. Elon clapped him on the shoulder, a rare grin breaking through. That's the spirit, partner. You're already halfway there. The gesture startled Bradley, but it felt real, solid, like a promise. Nearby, Timmy's mom, Jen, whispered to her son, "See, even big shots can learn something new." Timmy nodded, still clutching his phone, the video of Elon and Bradley now a treasured keepsake. The flight wore on, and the cabin's energy shifted. Passengers who'd been gawking earlier now seemed invested, sneaking glances not of judgment but of quiet encouragement. Bradley pulled out his phone, hesitated, then opened Twitter. The hashtag #First-Class Fiasco was trending, clips of his outburst racking up views. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, then he typed, "Lost a deal today, then lost my cool. Met a man who showed me what real success looks like. Time to rethink everything." He hit send, his heart pounding. Elon peeked over. "Not bad," he said. "Short, sweet, honest. Now back it up with action." Bradley nodded, a flicker of determination replacing the dread. "I will," he said. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Elon leaned back, satisfied. "Good. And when you figure it out, send me a note. I might have a project or two you'd fit." The offer hung in the air, casual but electric. Bradley's eyes widened. "You serious?" "Dead serious," Elon replied. "I like people who fight their way back. Reminds me of me." The plane banked slightly, the coastline of California faintly visible in the distance, and for the first time in hours, Bradley felt something like hope. The cabin of flight QF-1127 buzzed with a subtle energy as the plane sliced through the night sky, now just a few hours from Los Angeles. Bradley Carter's phone vibrated relentlessly in his hand, notifications piling up under his impulsive tweet. Replies ranged from snarky jabs, "Nice meltdown suits," to cautious optimism. "Rooting for you, man. Prove 'em wrong." He scrolled through, his jaw tight, but Elon's voice cut through the noise. "Don't let the haters rent space in your head," he said, not even glancing at the screen. "Focus on the ones who see potential." Bradley set the phone face down, exhaling sharply. "Easier said than done. Half my followers think I'm a joke now, and the other half are just waiting for me to fail again." Elon shrugged, unfazed. "Let 'em watch. Failure's only permanent if you stop moving. You're not stopping, are you?" Bradley shook his head, a spark of resolve hardening in his chest. "No. Not this time." Across the aisle, Lisa, the mom who'd spoken earlier, caught Bradley's eye. "You've got a chance most people don't," she said, her voice steady. "A public screw-up's brutal, but it's also a spotlight. Use it." Her daughter Mia nodded, twirling an earbud. "Yeah, like, people love a comeback. My TikTok's full of 'em." Bradley cracked a faint smile, surprised by the support from strangers he'd barely noticed an hour ago. Elon tapped the armrest between them, drawing Bradley's attention back. "She's right. That spotlight's yours to steer. So, what's your next move?" Bradley hesitated, his mind racing. "I don't know. Restructure the company, maybe? Shift the focus. Carter Industries has been all about profit margins. Real estate flips, hostile takeovers. Maybe it's time we built something instead of just buying it." Elon's eyes lit up, that visionary gleam he was famous for. "Now you're talking. What's your something? Give me a pitch. Right here, high-altitude boardroom." Bradley blinked, caught off guard, but the challenge lit a fire under him. He straightened in his seat, the fog of self-pity clearing. "Okay, sustainable housing," he said, the idea forming as he spoke. "Affordable, eco-friendly units for working families, solar panels, recycled materials, stuff that lasts, not just flashy condos for the rich." Elon nodded, impressed. "Solid start." "Why housing?" Bradley paused, digging deeper. "Because I grew up in a leaky trailer. Me, Mom, and two sisters. Dad's company got me out, but I forgot what it's like to scrape by. Maybe this is how I give back." His voice steadied, the words feeling right, like a piece of himself he'd buried under suits and stock tickers. "That's your why," Elon said, pointing a finger. "Hold on to it. The how's tricky. Supply chains, permits, funding, but you've got the resources to figure it out. Start small, prove the model, then scale." Bradley scribbled notes on a napkin, adrenaline pumping. "You think it could work?" "I know it can," Elon replied. "I've seen worse odds turn into wins." Just don't half-ass it. Commit. The cabin dimmed further as the crew lowered the lights for the overnight leg. But Bradley's mind was wide awake. He glanced at Elon, who was now flipping through a worn notebook filled with sketches, rockets, cars, wild ideas scrawled in Sharpie. "What's that?" Bradley asked. Elon grinned, showing him a page. "Next starship design. Gotta keep the brain busy at 30,000 feet. The sketch was chaotic but brilliant, a glimpse into the mind that had reshaped industries. "You never stop, do you?" Bradley said, half in awe. "Not when there's work to do," Elon replied. "World's got too many problems. Poverty, climate, you name it. Sitting still's not an option." He tucked the notebook away, then fixed Bradley with a serious look. "Your housing idea, it's not just business, it's a mission. Treat it like one, and you'll surprise yourself." The plane jolted slightly, turbulence rattling the overhead bins, and a few passengers stirred. Timmy, the kid from row 8, popped up again, his voice bright. "Mr. Musk, did you really sleep in your factory when SpaceX was starting?" Elon laughed. "Yeah, kid. Couch in the break room, shower in the gym, smelled like rocket fuel half the time, but it beat giving up." Timmy's mom, Jen, smiled. "He's obsessed with your rockets. Wants to be an engineer someday." "Smart kid," Elon said, tossing Timmy a wink. "Stick with it. World needs more builders." Bradley watched the exchange, struck by how effortlessly Elon connected. With a child, a struggling CEO, a flight attendant. "How do you do that?" he asked. "Talk to everyone like they matter?" Elon shrugged. "Because they do. Every person's got a story, a fight. Ignoring that's how you end up alone at the top." The words hit Bradley like a punch. Alone at the top, that's where he'd been, surrounded by wealth but hollowed out by it. "I've been a jerk to a lot of people," he said quietly. "Employees, competitors, even my family. Didn't see the point in caring." Elon didn't sugarcoat it. "That's your mess to clean up. Start with an apology, mean it, and go from there. People can smell fake a mile away." Bradley nodded, pulling out his phone again. He opened his contacts, scrolling to his sister Ellie's name. They hadn't spoken in months. Not since he'd blown off her wedding for a board meeting. He typed a quick text. "Hey, I've been an ass. Can we talk when I'm back?" He hit send before he could overthink it, then looked at Elon. "That's one down." "Good," Elon said. "Keep going. Redemption's a marathon, not a sprint." The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing they'd hit the halfway mark, still hours from LAX but closing in. Bradley glanced out the window, the ocean a black expanse below, and felt a strange calm. "You didn't have to do this," he said to Elon. "Could have let me stew, watched me crash. Why help me?" Elon leaned back, crossing his arms. "Because I've been the guy who needed a wake-up call. Took a few hard knocks to get it. If I can save you some bruises, why not?" Sarah returned with a tray of snacks, pretzels and cookies, and paused by their row. "You two okay?" she asked, her smile warm. "Better than okay," Elon said, grabbing a cookie. "How's that nephew of yours holding up?" "He's a trooper," she replied. "Your note's gonna make his week." Bradley took a pretzel, his appetite creeping back. "Tell him he's got 2 fans now," he said, surprising himself. Sarah's eyes widened, then softened. "Will do." "Thanks, both of you." As she moved on, Bradley turned to Elon. "You meant it, didn't you, about that project?" Elon chewed his cookie, nodding. "Yep. Got a clean energy startup that could use a guy with your connections, once you've got your feet under you. No handouts, though. You earn it." Bradley straightened, the challenge igniting something dormant. "Deal," he said. "I'll send you a plan when I've got one." The plane steadied, the turbulence fading, and the cabin settled into a peaceful hum. Bradley looked around, at Mia filming quietly, Timmy doodling rocket designs, Lisa and Jen chatting across the aisle, and realized he wasn't just a passenger anymore. He was part of something, a story unfolding at 30,000 feet, guided by a man who saw potential where others saw wreckage. The cabin of Flight QF-1127 grew quieter as the night deepened, the hum of the engines a steady backdrop to the soft rustle of passengers settling in. Bradley Carter sat beside Elon Musk, the weight of the last few hours sinking in. Not as a burden now, but as a foundation. His phone lay silent on the tray table, the tweet he'd sent still rippling through the digital ether, but his focus had shifted. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or power plays. He was thinking about tomorrow, not as a deadline, but as a beginning. Elon flipped through his notebook one last time, then tucked it into his jacket. "You've got a long road ahead, partner," he said, his voice low but clear. "But you're not starting from scratch anymore. That's something." Bradley nodded, tracing the edge of the napkin where he'd jotted his housing idea. "Yeah, feels like I've been asleep, running a machine instead of living. You woke me up." Elon chuckled, leaning back in his seat. "Don't give me too much credit. You were ready to hear it, otherwise you'd still be yelling about my boots." Bradley laughed, a real laugh this time, and it felt good, like shaking off rust. "Fair point," he said. "But those boots, they're growing on me. Might get a pair myself." "Careful," Elon warned with a grin. "They come with a habit of kicking bad habits." Across the aisle, Mia had dozed off, her phone resting on her lap, the video of their exchange saved for posterity. Timmy was still awake, sketching furiously, his mom, Jen, watching with a proud smile. Lisa caught Bradley's eye again and gave him a small nod, a silent vote of confidence that hit harder than he expected. The cabin felt less like a plane now and more like a crossroads, a place where paths had shifted, not just his own. The captain's voice broke the stillness, smooth and calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Los Angeles. Local time is 11:45 p.m. and we'll be on the ground in about 30 minutes. Thanks for flying with us." A murmur rippled through the rows as seatbacks straightened and trays stowed, but Bradley and Elon stayed put, the moment lingering. "So, what's next for you?" Bradley asked, genuinely curious. Elon adjusted his cap, his eyes glinting with that restless energy. "Back to the grind. SpaceX has a launch next week. Tesla's got some kinks to iron out. Always something. You?" Bradley took a breath, the answer clearer than it had been all day. "Home first. Talk to my sister. Start fixing what I broke. Then the company. That housing project. I'm serious about it. Gonna pitch it to the board, see if I can turn this mess into something worth building." Elon clapped him on the shoulder again, a gesture that felt less startling now, more like a seal of approval. "That's the spirit. Send me that plan when it's ready. I'll hold you to it." Bradley met his gaze, steady and sure. "I will. And thanks, Elon, not just for the seat, but for the kick in the ass." Elon smirked. "Anytime, partner. Just don't need it again." The plane dipped, the lights of LAX twinkling below like a promise. Sarah made one last pass, collecting trash and flashing them a smile. "You two made this flight one for the books," she said. "Safe travels, and good luck, Mr. Carter." Bradley returned the smile, meaning it. "Thanks, Sarah. Tell your nephew he's got this." She nodded, touched, and moved on. As the wheels touched down with a gentle thud, the cabin erupted in soft applause. Not for the landing, but for the unlikely pair in row 6. Bradley felt the eyes on him, but this time they didn't burn. They lifted. He unbuckled his seatbelt, standing as the plane taxied to the gate, and glanced at Elon one last time. "See you out there?" he asked. Elon stood too, stretching. "Count on it. Keep walking the right path, partner." 3 months later, Bradley Carter made headlines again, not for a meltdown, but for a pivot. Carter Industries unveiled its first sustainable housing project, a modest complex in East LA, with a mission to house families, not just profits. Every new employee got a pair of scuffed boots on day one, a note tucked inside. "Your character matters more than your title." Senisian, the viral video from Flight QF1127 didn't ruin him. It became his launch pad, a testament to a man who'd fallen hard and risen better. Elon sent him a signed photo a week after the groundbreaking, not of a rocket or a Tesla, but of those boots, with a scrawled message. "Told you they'd fit. Keep building." Bradley framed it in his office, a reminder that life's greatest lessons often come in unexpected packages, like a first-class seat next to a legend who saw more in him than he'd seen in himself. The plane doors opened and the passengers filed out into the warm LA night. Bradley stepped onto the jetway, his suitcase in hand, and took a deep breath. The world was waiting, ready to judge, ready to forgive, and for once he was ready to face it.